It's better.
Okay. All right. We did it. Thank goodness. Okay. So
Let me. Can I? Now you're better. Let me speak my proper speakers on because I can hear you better, and then hopefully we've solved the problem.
Okay.
Bear with a second.
If we get a loop, you'll have to turn them off.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, and you're on my studio speakers now, so I can hear you all. That's fine.
But we now have echoing.
Okay, I'm going to turn them off. They're going. I've turned them off. Just got to wait.
Okay. Do you remember these COVID days where we were on Zoom trying to figure out how to get everything started? It's given me a flashback to that. Oh, brilliant. Okay, so yes, just to recap, and we'll start this off. So we're in the Easter break as well at the moment. So what that's meant is that a lot of students, because Easter is very important here in Italy, they've traveled back home. And so we do have one student with us this evening, and then we've also got, you can see on here, Julian Guzzo is basically doing the recording so that the other students will be able to see this as well that weren't able to be here tonight. So thank you for being here, and yes, just assume that you're speaking to a lot more people because you will be later. Just a brief introduction as to what we've already done on this course, and then we've prepared some questions for you guys as well. So here at Studentato Nest, we've actually each evening got together and we've come up with questions that are appropriate for each individual speaker. And our speakers are different depending on their background and what they've done in work. We've gone everywhere from financial advice all the way through to management of big transport fleets.
Yes.
And so obviously this evening, you two have never met before, I don't think.
I don't think we have, Simon. No. Nice to meet you.
Okay, so Lynette, ladies first, if you'd like to give a brief introduction as to who you are and what you do.
Okay, so just a potted history then. I was a senior civil servant for the UK government, and I latterly worked in HMRC, heading up their debt management capability. So I managed everything from what we called the frontline telephony service, which would take incoming calls from taxpayers who owed money, and made outbound calls as well. We also covered not just tax, all the different types of taxes, but we were responsible at the time for tax credits, which is a benefit. So any overpayments of tax credits, which is quite a different proposition from collecting taxes, and obviously lots of different legislation for all the different tax types, etc. Right through to court action, insolvency action, and everything in between. So I was operationally responsible for about 6,000 full-time equivalents at the time. So yes, that's what I did for my sins. So I started off my career actually in the holiday industry. So I didn't wake up as a child and think, I want to be a debt collector, but that's what I ended up doing. So I retired from HMRC about 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, 7 and a bit years ago. And I set up my own company, and predominantly I've worked with the governments, giving them support. I did a long stint in Jersey, which is a Channel Island just off the UK, and worked for them for about 2 years. And I've worked in places like Belize and Cyprus and places like that for my own consultancy company, again advising governments on debt collection strategies. And for my sins, I also work for the International Monetary Fund as one of their external experts, and I've mainly worked in like that former Yugoslavia part of the world, so Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, North Macedonia. But I've also done some work for them in Malta. I think that's probably it, actually, for the IMF of late. And more recently, I've been doing, it's completed now, a piece of work for their virtual interactive training. So it's been a big piece of work that I've worked on with a colleague from Central Canada. And it's now been published in English, but will be published in other languages. And people from governments, but other financial institutes can have access to it. And it is what it says on the tin. It's a virtual interactive training. So everything about debt management within the taxes space. So that was probably enough from me. But yeah, quite varied. It's quite interesting. I work quite a lot from home. So again, I do quite a lot on Zoom calls and what have you now. But I have physically visited most of those countries as well, and been on the ground with them. And it's, although they're different cultures, they're different countries, they all have the same problems when it comes to collecting tax.
Sure. Very nice. Okay, that's a lot of travel. You've been around a lot of places as well. So amazing. Yeah. Simon, tell us about yourself.
I would call myself a creative, and I would also call myself a musician, which really was what I intended to do for a career. But with the creative industries, work can either be not much, or you'll be really busy and lots of traveling. And if you've got a young family, that's probably not always the best thing for a secure relationship. So my wife turned around and told me many years ago, go and get myself a normal job. So I decided to join the police. So I retired as a police leader October 24. So this year will be 2 years since I retired. Some people can retire and then do nothing, or think they're doing nothing, but my brain was still active. So I've gone back to university, and I'm currently in my first year of a PhD, which is a mixture of performing arts, business and education. I also work 1 day a week at Buckinghamshire New University, where I work in their College of Innovation and Leadership, and I'm one of the lecturers on their Global Aviation Leadership and Management Masters. I have no background whatsoever in aviation, but you spoke about, Adam, about COVID. As part of my creative role, I call myself a voice performance coach. So I work with loads of people in order to give them the skills or support them in their communication. And Bucks had asked me to do during COVID, they had an influx of pilots, cabin crew and airline management, because they weren't working, decided to go back to university. And they asked me to come in and do a screen and do some work with them on coping strategies for working 24/7, and also just look, as much as you talk about aviation being glamorous, sometimes when you're on a long haul flight, it's not really that glamorous. Let's be realistic. A pilot takes off, they press a button, the plane does the rest, and they're just staring out of a window, just there in case something happens. So after that, with some of my other skills, they just asked me, would I be interested in doing some teaching on leadership and management? And then, so I've been there since 2021. It's only online now, unfortunately. Last year it was in person and online. But I teach the Masters Leadership and the Leadership and Management module, and then some of the other lecturers look at business and risk and things like that, because they're more from that industry. But mine's more generic with a link back to aviation marketing and things like that. So that's where I am at the moment.
Very good. Okay, very different careers and professions, which is one of the reasons that I've asked you to be here. This again is the finale of our entire course, and the way that we've structured it as well is that we've got questions for you both individually, and then we'd also like to pitch you against each other for some questions as well, and we'll see what happens. So do you want to just introduce who you are and what you're studying as well?
Okay, good evening.
Hello.
I'm Davide, and I'm currently in my second year of civil engineering.
Okay, so we are here at Studentato Nest, which is basically like a dormitory building that also offers extracurricular courses for the students that are all at the University of Trento. You're all at Trento University,
Yeah,
right?
either Trento
Or Rovereto, which is the next city over. And so this is one of the courses that we do in the evenings. So again, it's advice on multiple different levels and different experiences in life too. I'm still getting ever slight feedback from you, Simon. Can I ask you, just while I
Yes, turn my mic off.
just while we're asking Lynette a question, and obviously when it's for you, Simon, we'll switch back over. And obviously if you're talking to each other, it's different. God bless you. Sorry about that. Okay, so and then very, very brief introductions to who I am as well. So my name's Adam. I teach English all throughout Trentino, which is the region we're in right now. It's the region of the Dolomite Mountains. We are just a few stops away from Austria. And in fact, just a few hundred years ago, this was Austria in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. But during the war, it switched over. So now we are in Italy, but they also speak a lot of German. And so a lot of our questions as well are also to do with language, different cultures. And we've done some background research on what you do anyway, before your introductions through LinkedIn and your websites and such as well. So we're going to be using references of what you are good at. So you can take it over for the first question, which is for Lynette.
Yeah, I have my first question for Lynette. So how do you make people cooperate efficiently, even if they speak different languages and have very different backgrounds?
Okay, that's a really good question. Thank you. So when I'm working with countries that don't speak English, I always have a translator, an interpreter with me. But it's recognizing as well that language doesn't always translate perfectly, does it? So, you know, you have to sense check everything. It definitely takes a lot longer when I'm working with a country that isn't English speaking, because of the translation part of it. And it takes a tremendous amount of concentration. I find it much easier when I'm actually on location in the country working with a translator, because you can actually pick up a lot of body language and, you know, a lot of, you can feel the mood music, if that makes sense, in the room. Whereas when you've got translators and you're on a Zoom call, it's often simultaneous translation. So you've got someone talking in their mother language and you hear it in English in your ear. And I find it exhausting, to be honest, with simultaneous translation. And often we're on hour-long calls, so I need more than one translator as well, because they physically need to take a break. And tax isn't necessarily the most exciting subject. It's very dry, as I say, for want of a better word. So it can be really hard work. So yeah, it's much quicker, much easier to work with countries when on location than on Zoom per se, but much easier when they speak English. And of course, there's lots of documentation, because I have to look at lots of legislative acts before I can make recommendations. I can't assume that their legislation is the same as the UK and gives them the same authorities and powers. So I have to get often lengthy legislative documents translated, which normally my translators work overnight to get that sort of thing. So there's lots of documentation going backwards and forwards as well. It's not just the verbal translation that's needed to do. So it is more difficult, as I say, when people don't speak English. I have to allow at least twice the time to get the same amount of work done. In terms of working with people from different cultures, I think it takes just a huge amount of understanding and respect. When I'm working for the IMF, they, as a big institution, and they know their countries, there is always a, they call it a backstopper because it's Americanized, but it's a supervisor, a manager by, in my language, that works with you. So they will give you a lot of background on the country that you're going to work with, including any cultural differences and anything that you should avoid saying to, to cause offence. So a really good example of that, just a quick one, is when I was working in Cyprus, it wasn't to refer to Northern Cyprus and Southern Cyprus, because in Southern Cyprus, where I was working, they still refer to Northern Cyprus as the occupied territory. And if I walked into the Cypriot office and started to talk about North Cyprus, and instantly offended people, it's not going to be very easy for me to be able to work with them and gain their trust. And one of my favourite sayings is trust arrives by foot, but disappears on horseback. So I'm always very careful not to offend. I mean, of course, we all make mistakes sometimes, but I really do get my head in the right place, that I want to be open, I want to be respectful. I certainly don't want to get off on a bad foot with people. I think I approach things in a different way to some other people as well. Certainly working for the IMF, countries often think you're going there as a bit of an auditor, because you're going to look at what they've done, you're going to pick up on what they've done badly and make a whole list of recommendations. So I always say to the countries that I'm working with that I will talk to them every step of the way. I will tell them what I'm finding, so that my final report that goes off to Washington, DC will not have any surprises in for them. And I'm not going to obviously lie in a report, but I want it to be fair and balanced. So if I show them what I'm preparing as we go along and we agree the recommendations rather than it be a shock to them, I've always found that I've been like pushing an open door. So I think I get a lot more out of the countries that I work with, and they get a lot more out of me, because we build that trust. And I just genuinely like people anyway. So I'm a good people person. So I get in there and I talk to them and I tell them a bit about myself, that I've got a husband who's a grumpy old man, and I've got children and I've got grandchildren. People can relate to you, can't they? And they don't just see you as this stuffy auditor type person that's coming to tell them what they're doing badly, because there's no point. So I think, has that answered your question?
Yeah, that definitely does answer my question.
Do you have any points you want to add that you were writing down, or were you coming up with?
No, I was just taking notes.
Taking notes. There is something that you've said there that is that's kind of relevant again as well, because most of my work here, I spend half my day in Italian or in English, depending on the level of the other people. And what you're saying about cultural context, and that absolutely is true. We have something here as well which we call the lei, which is basically a form of politeness that you basically refer to the person in the third person feminine to give respect. And so I get called, would she like a cup of tea to me all the time? And I'm like, who are you talking? Oh, you mean me? Yes, okay. And so there's these little things that we have to adapt to, which we spoke as well to Tim Stedman, who is, he calls himself a hotel manager, but basically he is in charge of the entire work specific crew on a cruise liner, by which he's not the captain. They have a crew of about 60 people. He's in charge of all the staff, all the entertainers, all the cooks and everybody, which is around about 1,000 people working on the ship. But he calls himself a manager, hotel manager. And he said one of the first things he realized was working with so many different cultures, that body language is incredibly important. And also not just physical gestures, but the way that you're communicating with people, which I would guess in person is always easier because you can gauge it. And I wanted to ask this question off the back of that. And there's another small anecdote. The Prime Minister of Italy is called Giorgia Meloni. She was famously in an interview with President Trump, where they were speaking to each other. And by law, there was an interpreter. The interpreter perhaps was having a bit of an off day. She wasn't quite translating exactly right. But Ms. Maloney has such a high level of English that she was able to interrupt. And she basically said, faccio io, which means I'll do it myself. So she was sort of fired on air and said, I'm going to translate my own words because you're not able to do it well enough. There's some new technology as well, and this is going to be obviously a topic that comes back a little bit because it's the buzzword right now with artificial intelligence, able to interpret what we're saying. There are earpieces and things like that. And you spoke about having these dual interpreters at the same time. Have you had any experience around how AI is affecting your work, perhaps with translation, perhaps with these cultural differences, whether it's made any faux pas or anything in that sort of realm at all?
No, the countries that I've worked with recently have been English speaking, such as Malta. So although there is Maltese, they speak and communicate totally well in English. So I've not had any experiences of AI interpreters. The interpreters that I've worked with previously were very concerned about their roles because of the advent of AI coming along and whether that would take over their jobs. Interestingly, I'm just been asked to put forward a proposal to work with a New Zealand IT company that I sometimes do some work with, because obviously they're heavily investing in the AI space at the moment. Not in terms of translation, but in terms of how AI can help debt collection. But then exactly what you're talking about there, Adam, but as AI is interpreting risk around debt and debtors, is it actually making any mistakes or is it operationally savvy? So they want my company to be that space that works between AI and operations and whether it all makes sense. I'm not sure whether it's a contract that I will end up with or I actually want to end up with, but that's another story. But it's interesting to see how AI is moving into all of our workplaces and how it certainly is going to, and you can see that there's a space for it. I mean, in the debt world now, one of the things that I did when I was with HMRC is we very much worked on a one-to-one debtor, which is an expensive way to collect money. So we started to use all sorts of analytics to work on the one-to-many. So it was the first sort of analytics moving into the AI space as well. So it's interesting how helpful it can be and how cost effective it can be. But yeah, there's lots of gremlins, I think, to sort out for another, as we go along with this. So yeah, interesting.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Again, if some of these questions bounce off or they resonate, then that's good either way. We'll switch across to Simon as well now. So thank you, Lynette, for that. Just remember what your questions were. Yeah, do that first one.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so as someone who is in a close future going to start working, I wanted to ask you what would some advice be for ways to behave during the interview and how to seem confident.
Okay, I can hear myself echoing, so I could see what was the problem there. The first thing with interviews is that lots of candidates feel that it's the interview of the employer that you're going to rather than your interview, and it's your interview. One of the techniques that I use when I'm working with individuals is called work into the space. You have a few seconds when you walk in that room to make that assessment of what the room is like, because it's your interview. And sometimes they're set up in a certain way, and candidates then feel that that's how the interview needs to be. But it is your interview, and that's your opportunity to, the biggest problem is you go in the room, how do I need to communicate in order for you to hear me properly? The other thing is a lot of the time the room is set up in a way where you're very, very close to the panel. So very rarely now is it one person, because it needs to be fair and inclusive, and that's very difficult for them to do with one person, just in case something's said and then there's no one else in the room. But you could have 2 or 3 people, most common in an interview panel. And if you don't take the chair and move it back, it becomes like a tennis match, because whoever's speaking, you're having to move your head, right? Now, many people wouldn't think that, and I can assure you, most interviewers don't think that deeply either, right? But I think because of what I do, and I've been on both sides of the table, I'm more aware of that. So just by moving back and your peripheral vision allowing you to see both people, then you become more friendly, you become more approachable, because you're speaking to both, even if you're speaking to one. So that may be a bit like what Adam said on how that third person gets approached. So you might be speaking to one person, but you're still including the second person or the third person, just because you can see them all at the same time, even though your eye contact would normally be. But the biggest thing I'm picking up at the moment is interviews are online now. And so some of those skills get lost. Not so much this year, because we've just come out a module now that we've just worked on. But one of our on our assessment that we do for our leadership and management module, it's got different practices. Practice 1 is a video log. They have to record a video of themselves selling themselves, which I have the pleasure to mark. The good thing is I'm not reading 1,000 words, so it's only like I watch a 2-minute video. And the first thing I'm trying to pick up is, when people say to me, what should I record it on? This is where the problem comes with modern interviews, is that there's an expectation that you have a technical background. There's an expectation that you have equipment that you can do things with. So when people say to me, when I'm watching someone back to me, I'm not bothered what you've recorded on. But if you haven't recorded it on something where the audio and the video is clear, then in theory, I can't see you in order to make assumption of the person who's selling themselves. So yes, audio has to be clear. It needs to be appropriately lit. Attire, I do think sometimes if you're wearing a shirt and tie in that kind of environment, it could come across as over the top, because they know you're not physically there in the room. But that is a first impression that I would always expect when someone comes in the room, that they've made the effort. But equally, we talk about in a world of diversity and inclusiveness, not everybody in this day and age, and it was a lot easier, and Lynette, I'm not judging your age, but it was a lot easier when we were younger in relation to employment. I don't know if you would agree. A nod would be nice. Your mic's not on. I was only asking if you agree.
Sorry, that might have been me. I think hang on. Are you able to unmute yourself, Lynette? We can't hear you, Lynette. We can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself? The microphone button at the bottom.
Sorry, Adam, if I've got someone
sorry,
else in.
I didn't realise I had. I'm not sure it was easy, Simon. I just think it was different. But if you're suggesting that we had business attire, which was normal, so suited or booted, be it male or female, you're right. You knew how to turn up. You certainly wouldn't turn up in jeans and t-shirt.
And that,
so from that point of view, then yeah, it's just a different world, isn't it now?
it was a different world. I would turn around and say, from my own point of view, any job that I went for, the chances of getting that job was far higher than it ever was now. Now it's and so obviously everybody's in different positions, but some, even when I was working in recruitment within policing, as an above and beyond my normal day job, and I was interviewing for police officers, some had made the effort, shirt and tie and everything else, but some hadn't. So you do make an assumption when someone walks in the door that they're going for a professional job. You would expect them to be professional, but everybody has a different background and we don't know their background, and that's where the problem lies. So you're making what we call unconscious bias of something where you don't know the full picture. And sometimes you could lose somebody by not giving them a chance. So I don't know, have I answered everything within that question? I do apologize if I've gone off tangent slightly, because I do that.
Can I just add something as well? Because I think when you're going for an interview, it's a competition, right? There's X amount of people going for an interview and they want Y amount of people to succeed. So it's a competition. So you have to get your head around that. You can only control you. You can't control your competition. You probably don't even know what the competition is. So in my head, it's always about, this is my opportunity. I'm going to be me and I'm going to do the best I can.
Yeah.
That's all I can control. I can't control the other candidates. I can't necessarily control the panel, although I have disagreed with the panel sometimes on some questions and still got the job. So be true to yourself as well. And if you have a little argument with the panel, it doesn't mean you've lost everything, because I certainly didn't on a couple of occasions. But also, I think in my head, I like to switch it a little bit and think they're interviewing me, but I'm actually interviewing them as well, because it is their opportunity to sell their organisation to me, because I might decide I don't want to work for them or with them. So I think then that's sort of like, I can only control me. I'm going to be the best version of me. I'm going to interview them as well. It just makes me feel a lot more solid, a lot more prepared, and a lot more in control. And then I don't feel so nervous. And I think to get over those nerves, it's natural to feel nervous with being interviewed, but you need to give the best version of you. You need to lose some of those nerves, whatever you need to do. And certainly going through that thought process in my head helps me lose the nerves. I actually am one of those people that enjoy being interviewed. I love it. I really enjoy it. So it's about the only opportunity I get to speak about me for an hour, 2 hours. So, but, my kids and my grandkids aren't interested. So let's just go for another interview and let somebody be interested in me. And if you get your head around that, again, it just helps.
Yeah, that's true. I think to come off the back of this, and then Simon, there'll be a secondary question based on what we're saying here. So I tell my students here a lot of the time as well, not only regarding LinkedIn and how LinkedIn can be used, for example, as networking, because here in Italy especially, it's called passaparola here, which is like passing the word, which is if you know a guy, you'll get the job. And it's very much still alive here. You can send all these CVs. Getting in the door is the hardest bit. But the thing that I always advise them to do, and has worked the best for me and the others I've advised to do as well, is to research the hell out of the company that you're going to, so that you know everything. of course, if you're able to physically go there, dressing well and everything, being early and on time, and even stating those things when people ask you the questions, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Here, working for you. How do you spend your free time? I'm a bit of a workaholic, but there's all these little things that we can say that helps us get the job. But one thing in particular that's a background of yours, Simon, that I want to ask about is, as we've seen from your website as well, is that it's a lot about voice coaching and about how you sound. And so I wanted to ask you, how can someone appear confident, especially with the voice, and especially for our viewers as well? If you're young, how can you come across as confident or worthwhile in that interview?
I'm going to just say one thing before I answer that question, is when candidates come into an interview room and they're asked how they feel, 99% would always say that they're nervous. But I always give the advice that at that point you may be nervous, but just turn around and say that I've done a lot of research to be here and I want to show you my best, right? So even though you are nervous, and you quite easily could say, I can tell you something that just sounds much better to the interview panel, because they would have heard nervous all day, and then you stand out. Doesn't mean that you will answer the questions any better. You might not get the job. I'm not saying that, but all I'm saying is that from that first question, they've already got a different idea of you because you haven't said you're nervous. You've said something different. In relation to your question you said, Adam, I think that's my biggest bugbear. I mean, obviously having a son that's, and when you've got kids and in 3 universities and everything that goes with it, what really annoys me is that you get a really good degree if you've worked hard, and you're there when you leave university, and then the minute you've left university, then you're back to there again. So unless you come from very strong parents that have got, or guardians that have got money and they funded your whole university, most university students are coming out with massive debt and going back to zero again. I've tried that argument on several times with the university I work for. Everybody thinks it's a great analogy, but nothing really changes. So my PhD that I'm doing is a mixture of performing arts, business, and education. And it's actually looking at what skills we can get within post-18 education, so higher education in the UK, in order to make, and we're not talking about, see, lots of the time they think it's performers. My PhD is solely about working with non-performers. So you're talking about some of those drier subject areas where in theory they're very academically qualified, but they're not learning those interpersonal soft skills at the same time. So as soon as those students go in the real world, then they're back to zero again. So my PhD is about looking at how we can put those skills from the tried and tested world of performing arts into academia much earlier. So when those students leave university, they're not there at the bottom of the rung. They're now in the middle of the rung. So in theory, they become much better employees for their employers, and then the employer then has less work to take them up the development ladder than it would be if they started right at the beginning. Now, I'm not saying within a PhD I can change the world. All I can do is evidence that with a focus group that it works or doesn't work, because obviously it can be proved either way. But I think that's the biggest problem that I see, is I think it's unfair that somebody has a debt of nearly £100,000, maybe, depending on how many universities they've been to, and all the other debt with accommodation, and then has to start again, because I think the universities let them down. So my advice would be, at the moment, that's a hard one. Most people will be young and go back to the start again, even if they have great academic training. But there's work being done out there, and I hope at some point that does change things, so students become better employees for their employers, and they can develop far faster and be in a much better position to have their careers.
Okay, I think I've touched on something that must be a passionate subject as well, because, and I don't mean this in any offensive way, we went slightly off piste. So I'm just going to remind you of
yes, thank you.
All of that was brilliant. The word perhaps that got lost along the way as well was, I was talking about the voice in particular. When you go into an interview, what is it that you can do with your voice that makes you sound different?
I think it's that it probably does go back to that a bit. It's to do with that confidence level,
right.
And being in a position that you can, you know, I suffer with really bad dyslexia, and that's probably one of the traits that you might have just seen in the time. I sometimes have to be brought back into the room. Now, if we go back a few years, there wasn't any reasonable adjustments in relation to anything within an interview process. So if you were different, and obviously neurodiversity is a big word now, where before it probably wasn't so much, and you had those traits, I would probably have put myself in a disadvantage before I'd even started. So now reasonable adjustments are really important, especially with if there is a problem in the way that you communicate in an interview process. But then you also have to be honest that you want to declare that, and then we have the problem. Yeah, if you're not declaring, then in theory, then you're just going in the same as any other candidate would. So if there is limitations within your voice and your communication, then that may cause you a problem. So I think you need to be honest. The employer is always asking you to be honest if there's any communication issues. You might need more time for an interview question in order to get it in your head. You might need those questions in advance. You might need those questions written in front of you. But it is a two-way process. The employer is saying, you know, we're here for you if you tell us, but if you don't tell them, then in theory, you're not going to be given those opportunities. So if there is a weakness anywhere, it's not a weakness, but if there is, but they would see that as a weakness in the interview process because you haven't declared, and then other candidates would come across as stronger. But you're not weak, you're just different, and you need a little bit more support. And but you don't always know that. You don't always know that.
You turn that difference into an asset by stating it as well, is what you're saying, which is very profound.
I didn't know what my problem was. You know, since COVID, I've gone for 10 jobs that I was qualified for and didn't get any of them.
Right.
But it's only when I started my PhD that I took advantage of these things they're offering, and I just didn't realise how bad my dyslexia was, and in order to know where the problem lied. So I think once you address that problem, you know, I play on it, not play for benefit, but I play on it in order to make other people feel comfortable to be able to share.
Which is kind of what Lynette has been saying as well, is that this idea of, you know, becoming a real person in front of you and not, you know, to knock down these walls. They're all very good. I'm loving what we've got.
Can I just add something, Adam?
Sure.
Having interviewed hundreds of people in my professional career, I've sometimes, as the interviewer, said to people, just take a breath.
Sure.
Just calm down, and, you know, because you can see they're getting so worked up and so nervous, they're losing their thread, they don't know what to say. So my advice is, when it's about your voice and how you're actually presenting yourself, is I can really talk quite quickly, and I use my hands a lot. So I might want to even sit on my hands, put my hands under my knees as I'm doing now. My shoulders are still going, you can see, because I'm a bit like the weather girl or whatever. But, you know, so you've got control of your hands. You're not waving them about. And start to talk slower.
Yeah.
Take some breaths.
It's good advice.
Just really think about what you're saying. Because if you're talking really quickly, you're doing a lot of arm movement, people stop listening to you. It's hard.
Yeah.
So you can practice that before an interview. You can practice how you're going to present yourself. So I would literally put my hands under my knees. I'd sit back, put my shoulders down, take a breath, and start speaking slower than I normally would. And that brings everything then to the forefront. So, that helps you. It really does.
Very nice. Very good. Okay. A lot of these things are working together. I've got a page full of notes already that I'm writing out here.
That's good.
The idea is that we're now going to try and sort of pitch you against each other a little bit. We'll see if you have differing opinions or similar opinions. You're both very courteous, so it's been great that you've been acknowledging each other. But now you can, if you wish to. We'll see if there's a bit of a battle.
Come on then, Simon. Let's go for it.
Do you have any questions that can lead to it between the two of them? Let me see what we've got on here. No, we'll come back to that one after. We've got another one for Simon for afterwards. I'm gonna do this one. I've prepared a couple here, which I'd like you to discuss. And it doesn't mean that it's necessarily you. It could be someone that you've either mentored or it could be someone that you've worked for. But what makes a good leader, in your opinions? Off you go.
Who wants to go first, Lynette?
You can go first, Simon.
Okay, I'll go first.
Come on, off you go.
I'll go first. This is what we've just been working on for the last module. But I think it's quite current at the moment with the unfortunate non-rest that's happening in the world, is that we see leaders come on television, and you've got people that are not they understand leadership, but they're not in a leadership position. And then they would turn around and say, how did that person get to where they are? And lots of the times leaders are making decisions based on the fact is what they think the public want to hear. And a lot of that time is that they don't want to mix things up because they're still in a career and they know if they say the wrong thing, it may jeopardize their own career. So sometimes in the back of their mind, they want to say one thing, but they can't say it because in theory, it may go against them. I think the great thing with me is because I'm retired and I get my pension every month, no matter what happens, I can be sometimes a little bit more honest when I work with employers because I haven't got anything to lose, but I know why they do what they do. One thing, as I always say, is that a leader should lead with compassion, empathy, heart, and the humanity. And if that comes across, even if you have to have difficult conversations, people would still appreciate that it's come from the right place rather than the person that's always very, very direct. We could all have views over people that we see in the media of what we think their style is and what they think their style is themselves. But that's what I would turn around and say, that those leadership qualities. But a lot of the time in interviews is you're not scoring that side of it. You can't score whether you like someone or not anymore. You could, a few years ago, that made a difference for you getting a job, but you can't score that anymore. So the fact is, if you ask someone competence related questions and they answer those questions, they're likely to get the job, but none of those questions are based on their interpersonal skills. And lots of leaders, when I've worked with them in interviews, will turn around and say what they do one-to-ones with all their staff and they do everything else. But they probably haven't, but because they're evidencing it and you can't prove it either way, they're successful. So all I would say, just to finish, is if you come with some kind of heart as a leader, your staff know that, and you're more likely to get the best out of your team than someone who's very, very direct and doesn't build up any engagement with anybody. But you do need to know people's different styles, and you only know that by having that interaction with your staff. And that's very, very difficult online because of body language is different and it's not the same. So that's why communication wise, lots of things have been lost, since this is how we do things every day now. Thank you.
I'm not going to disagree with anything that you said, Simon. I think that was great. But from my perspective, and having managed big commands, which is difficult because with the best will in the world, I'm not going to know 6,000-7,000 people. You have to find different ways to communicate because I couldn't be face to face with people all over the UK all the time. So it's how you can reach people so they know you, they know your values. So I always approach people. Respect is a big thing to me. So always be respectful of people, even if they are under your command. Everybody has something to offer. I've rarely met people that want to come to work to do a bad job. So if they're not performing, it's about, as a leader, you're failing as well. You should be there to help and support them to do a good job. Sometimes that doesn't work, and then there are processes and procedures to deal with that. But you should do everything as a leader in your power to help every member of your team succeed. It isn't for you. You shine as a leader if they're shining. So you don't have to outshine anybody. You don't have to be cleverer than anybody. And if you're, I had teams of experts that knew far more than me about UK collection legislation. Why did I need to know it? They knew it inside and out. They helped me get the whole team's performance up. So it's about identifying people's skills and abilities, and we've all got something different to offer. So when you're coaching, motivating, etc., you really do need to treat people as individuals and not collectively. So we're all motivated by different things. Different things make us tick. So it's about getting to know the people that you directly manage. And I'd say that not to be afraid as a leader as well was really key to me, because my natural style is participative, where I'd have lots of conversations with the team or with individuals to agree a way forward. But there were times in my career when I had direction from number 10 Downing Street. I needed to do something pretty quickly. Whether I agreed with it or not, as a senior civil servant, I had to get on and deliver that task. I'd have to be totally autocratic. And I'd listen to my team for a short while. I'd go, this is the job. This is what we've got to do. We've got 2 weeks to do it. And then you'd get a barrage of moans, groans, all the things I was actually thinking in my head. You let them have their say. And then you go, okay, I've heard you, but we've got to get on with it. That wasn't my natural style. But at times as a leader, you have to accept you do have the stripes and you can actually tell people what to do. And there are times that you have to do that. So I think a good leader, and like a lot of what we're seeing in the world right now, can err on the side of participative. And I think in general that is good. But they can go straight into autocratic when they need to. And sometimes that needs to be done.
That's very,
does that make sense?
It's beautiful. And actually, I think amongst all of this, I've created a list effectively from what you've both said, which I think ultimately makes a great boss, which is to have compassion, empathy, heart, humanity, be respectful, support, and be fearless. Those things together. So I wanted a debate, but actually you created something beautiful together. So thank you for that instead.
High five, Simon.
Very nice. I'm aware that we have shot over by quite a lot about what I said would be the time for this evening. If you're both all right, there's a sort of a closing argument that I'd both like you to take part in if you've got another 10 minutes. Is it all right?
Yeah, cool.
Yeah? Okay, perfect. So it sort of leads in, if you can mention your question here that you had. Exactly. So I'm going to let him read his question, and then I'm going to add a bit more on afterwards.
Oh, is that allowed? Are we going to allow that for Adam to add a bit on, Simon, do you think?
I'm doing that because I want to open up the question a little bit as well.
I'm teasing. Go on, go for it.
So, if you want to read the question that was going to be for Simon.
Okay, yeah. So we've read that you used to work in the police, and what was it that made you choose to become a voice performance coach?
Okay, so adding on to the back of that question, so going from the police to a new role, it's basically, have your previous experiences, so both of you, the previous jobs that you've done, helped your current career? So even if they're completely different experiences, have there been things that you've brought through that work well? And the thing that I've basically asked everybody on this course so far, so this ties in as well, is do you have any regrets? That's the question. Okay, off you go.
Who's going first? That was the question.
Shall I go first then this time, Simon? Is that okay? So obviously I can't answer the police bit to voice coach bit, but I wrote down, I've got my notebook here, but I didn't have the opportunity to mention it before, but I don't think you can underestimate transferable skills. So I started my life in travel. So I worked for a big tour operator. I sold holidays. I was very successful at that. I got promoted and I was quite a young manager. I then went into managing leisure centres, used exactly the same skill base, and then went back into travel. And then September the 11th happened and I needed a job and I started to work for the UK government. That's how I started to work with governments. So that wasn't my career path as I planned it. That's just what happened. But I've actually used my strengths and I've been able to use my skills transferable into all of those areas. So when I landed in the civil service, which was a very different world from where I'd worked before, I quickly had to learn the culture and to some degree fit in to the culture, although I could often not want to fit in, and that was quite interesting as well. But certainly I've always played to my strengths. My strengths are people management and communication and leadership, and I've used those skill bases wherever I've worked. So illustratively, when I managed a big leisure centre and it had a swimming pool, again, I knew nothing about the operations of swimming pools, but I had a pool plant manager who made sure that all the chemicals were mixed properly so people wouldn't die when they, dived into the deep end and what have you. And it's not rocket science, most industries that you work in, except for rocket science. You said that you're training to be a civil engineer. I guess that's more rocket scientist than anything I've ever done. But the places that I've worked where I've managed lots of people, they've all been transferable skills. So it's been getting to know people, getting to understand the organisation that you're working in, and leading from the front really. So yeah, transferable skills, big tick. Don't underestimate it. In terms of regrets.
Wait. Before you move on to regrets then, because you perfectly rounded it. Simon, let's go to you about transferable skills and then we'll go back to regrets. Okay.
Yes, very much something from me that I teach on our leadership and management module is about transferable skills. This probably goes back to your question you asked earlier about young people when they go into the interview process, is that you'd have some essential and desirables and they can't tick all the boxes because they haven't got the wealth of experience. So there is an art, but I am quite sure that most people have done something that they can relate to make it a transferable skill. Right. I know when I've applied for jobs that ask for, I've hit the essentials, but I haven't hit the desirables, maybe all of them. And I would bring something else in to say, well, I haven't ticked that desirable, but then I've done that which is comparable and transferable. So transferable skills, really, really important. And there is an art to that. And the people that succeed are the ones that are better of translating that and communicating that in a process. did you want me to pick up on anything else that you asked earlier? Why voice coaching or?
It's more to do with this idea of whether your police work has then helped you towards things like voice coaching. Are there lessons? So it's still on this idea of transferable, but for you,
I think there was always elements. If you start as a creative and then you get into a different job where, as much as you've worked really hard to get that job, because I think nowadays policing is more about someone's picked up a leaflet to become a police officer rather than the heart of wanting to help people. There was an expectation when I had my interview with the Met in London that there's a passion to be a police officer, and that's what they wanted to see. But the way it's gone now, because they need to get so many numbers in, is more of someone's picked up a leaflet and that, yeah, I'll give it a go. So there's a different mindset. But I missed the creative side of life, and you don't get that so much in the police. So I would turn around and say that the police hasn't helped me in relation to certain things. The person I was before I joined has helped me.
Okay.
Because I wanted to do a master's in acting while I was in the police, but they were full-time only. And where I went for my where I went to the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire, they did one of their part-time courses was their voice coaching course. And so my wife said to me, are you doing this just because it's part-time, or do you want to do it, or are you doing it because you want to do it? And I thought that's a fair question. And I have to say, it's probably the best thing I ever did. But I just thought to myself, hang on a minute, I don't really want to be in front. I'm more happy to help. The type of person I am is to help and support others. So really, it probably is the right course. So that's one thing there. But it has helped me. So this is when I said it, I would say my creative side has helped my policing rather than the policing helped my creative side. Okay. Because my master's dissertation or work is, even though on a master's, on my course, they dealt with the singing voice and the speaking voice, you don't get much exposure when you're in the police to the singing voice. So I thought I needed, and you've got to go where the help is. So I did my major research project was in police negotiation. So obviously communication becomes very much, and the voice becomes very much part of that. So I'm very proud of the work that I did in relation to that, and working in crisis and hostage negotiation with communication and giving other negotiators skills that they probably wouldn't think about. One of the things I pick up on is you get a call 3 o'clock in the morning that someone is in a bad place, whatever that could be. You've got all the details, you put your computer on and everything else, you get in your car and you drive. The first time that you engage with that person in crisis would be when you open your mouth. And the problem is you don't even know, as the negotiator, that you're prepared, ready for that negotiation or for that talk. So it allowed me to put some, I would say, a negotiation kind of ritual. So while that person's in the car driving to the job, they can do some exercises. So when they get out of that car, they're ready, they're focused, they've just got out of bed, but they're awake. And then when they start to negotiate with the person in crisis, it's not their first time of communication that morning. They've done some work before they get there. And I always remember we were working on a job with West Mercia Police, and they had 3 negotiators on that job because of how impactful it can be. Having that conversation, you need to build up rapport very, very quickly. And 2 of those negotiators had been working with me during my master's for 3 months solidly on techniques in order to help them. And they were both laughing to say, before they started talking, have we done Simon's techniques? Have we done that? So there isn't, it's like most things now, we're so far forward. Are they still doing them now? I don't know. But the point is, it just gave it, so just going back to the question, I would always say that my work that I do now in relation to the creative things was probably more of a lifesaver to me being the person I am for some of the things I had to experience,
Right.
that maybe other people may have gone off with stress, so they were coping mechanisms, but that's this doing the police rather than the police doing that for me.
Got it. Got it. Very nice. It's like rehearsing before you have to do the real thing. I like that. Okay, so let's move to regrets. Both of you, do you have any? If so, what are they? Bear in mind that we've got young ears listening. So
I'll go first again then, if you want to. Just about transferable skills as well. Just while Simon was talking, something came to mind. And it is when you're starting out and you perhaps haven't got any or many work examples to give, but it really is thinking outside the box. So time management's a really good example, isn't it? So if that's a desirable or essential criteria, but all the time we're managing our time, and particularly as students you are, because you've got assignments you've got to put in at certain times. So it's just thinking outside the box, what examples you can use from your life and what you have done. And so don't think about, I can't give an example of this. Really do turn it on its head and think, how can I give a good example? And time management, I think, as a student is critical, because you've got lots of, lectures to go to, lots of assignments to deliver on time. And so you're demonstrating that as a skill if you're getting through your course anyway. So just think, really do rack your brains. There's always people that will help you as well. I'm always really good at sort of like trying to get a work coach or a home coach or a whatever coach to help brainstorm and, just come up with those right things. Because I think two minds sometimes are better than one in coming up with these sorts of examples. So don't be, ashamed or afraid to phone a friend or get help from wherever you can. In terms of regrets, that's a really interesting one, and one I do sometimes sit back and reflect on myself. In general, I would say no, I haven't got any regrets. I didn't plan my career, as I've explained before. Some of it happened purely by accident. But what I have been able to do is grasp those opportunities as they've come up and make the most of them. So none of us expect things that happen in this world. September the 11th, when I was a general manager for a holiday company, I definitely wasn't expecting the whole holiday market to be decimated overnight, and me having the next 3 months to make most of my staff redundant, and then the company understandably making me redundant because nobody was buying holidays. I couldn't have planned for that. But what I did do was look hard and long at what opportunities were out there. I ran in holiday companies big contact centres. The government were going into opening up big contact centres and didn't know anything about them. And that's how I ended up working in government, because they needed help running contact centres. And that was something I was good at and I could offer them. So I think, no, I haven't got any regrets. I've perhaps done a couple of jobs a bit longer than I should have done.
Okay.
Because I was a little bit too comfortable, because even if it's a really hard, high-powered job, you get to a stage where it's a bit comfortable, let's face it. And for me, because I was quite ambitious, and that if I'd have pushed myself a bit more at the time, maybe I'd have got higher up the ladder. And that was at the time what I was keen to do. So I've perhaps settled for a job because I'm comfortable. I like the people that I work with. So that's, is it a regret? It's just an observation, really.
Nice. Simon.
Unfortunately, I do live in the world of regrets. I'm a positive person, but I'm also realistic mentally when I haven't been fulfilled. And I remember 2 weeks, I mean, it's like it was yesterday, but quite vividly, 2 weeks before I was going through the inspector process at the police, and I sat on my bed to get up in the morning, and it was about 2 weeks, as I say, and it said it would, and then I'm thinking, I'm going into a process where I'm having to say what I need to say rather than saying what I want to say. And that was the biggest thing that gave me a bit of a wake-up call to actually thinking, because I've got to, there's a rule, if you've done sort of 25 years and you're over 50, you can take your pension. And so in theory, I could have done another 5 years, which obviously would have been probably slightly financially better for me. But I think sometimes you've got to be honest with yourself that if you're not fulfilled, 5 years is a long time. You're 5 years older, 5 years more bitter. There's lots of people, when I asked people in younger officers in the police when they're having issues, whatever they were to be, do you enjoy if you ask someone a direct question like, do you enjoy the job? It's very, very difficult for someone to actually say, yes, I love it, when they don't really love it. So it's one of them questions that actually got a bit of reality. And I asked myself that question that I don't think, and my wife didn't want me to, she knew what that would do 5 years more. So there's times that you need to just say, right, I'm going. But I wasn't fulfilled. And I think that's the biggest problem. I needed to do something in order to fulfill me. So going back to university for 3 years full time to do a PhD it's hard in itself, because you've got to find supervisors and expertise. So that's totally different. That's a totally different thing. But I needed something to fulfill me. And the good thing is with this PhD is that it allows me some of those things that where I think I wouldn't say necessarily treated badly, but when you've been led the wrong way, you know you could do better, and those people were given opportunities. It allows me to try and to make some change to how the world is. So do I have regret? In that case, yes, I do. I would have liked to I'd love to have turned around and said to you, I left as, an assistant chief constable, and, that's it. I'm ready now to have an easier life. But that's not the case. I still needed to achieve something. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
I still think it's great. I mean, it's not related to a regret when you listen to yourself and change something. I think, Lynette, and as we all nodded when you said 5 years is a long time. It is a long time. And especially, and it's something as well, because when you're young, it seems even longer.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I'm approaching 40, and I still think that, 5 years is a long time to be doing something you don't want to do. And if you do love it, it flies by. Listen, guys, it's been absolutely amazing hearing all of your opinions. Thank you so much for finishing this course in such a wonderful way. I'd like to give you a round of applause if it's okay. So thank you very much. Bless you.
Thank you. And a round of applause for Simon.
And then
Well done, guys. Thank you for being here. And this was recorded as well, so I'll send you a copy of this afterwards if you'd like to see it. And we might make some sound bites, put them on things like LinkedIn and social media.
Oh, don't look for me on LinkedIn or social media. I just don't do it very well.
We've already found you. We already.
You'll have seen I don't do anything.
Yeah, I had to. I came off. I have got an X. That's all. I've got about 5 different LinkedIns because people were setting up accounts. That's the problem is that sometimes when you're in the security industry, it gets taken out of context. And I've seen so many jobs that the reason why something's happened is because of that I just thought it wasn't for me. And LinkedIn now, I should have one, and I totally agree, 100%. I tell my students, but at my age now, it's not going to change my life. So I worry about what I can control and not what I can't control anymore.
All right. Well, I'll send you the video of me anyway. So
Thank you.
again, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night,
Have
guys.
a good
See you
Easter.
soon.
Thank you, you too.
Yes.
Happy
Bye.
Easter.
Thank you.
See you
Bye.
later on. Bye bye bye
Bye-bye.
bye.